welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-fans talk about controversial or noteworthy comic books and comic book history. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl. Guys, I have a question.
Yes.
Should we be branding this as something like Countdown to a lot of comics?
Yes, that's a good name for anything.
Actually, not the countdown part, but the crisis part. Because when you guys said we were doing this, I was like, didn't we do that?
All right, so here's my bad idea because there's multiple countdowns, multiple crises in DC.
Yes.
Spoilers, listeners. We're doing Countdown to Infinite Crisis episode. You fucking read the fucking title, you probably know it by now. But this is not
Spoilers for the title.
So this is not to be confused with Countdown to Final Crisis, Countdown, or Crisis of Infinite Earths, Identity Crisis, or any of that shit.
Heroes in Crisis?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it's Countdown to Infinite Crisis.
So we're doing something that I have always wanted to do for the show, but I was always afraid that we couldn't handle it, that it was too much to take on. But we're going to do it anyway. And we are going to talk about right around my favorite era of comics, which is right around the mid-2000s at DC. And we are going to start, as Sly said, with Countdown to Infinite Crisis and a lot of lead-in to Infinite Crisis. And the next episode, we will be discussing the event itself, Infinite Crisis.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. It's gonna something. So,
It's gonna something.
Wait, OMAC isn't the event?
OMAC is part of the lead-in still.
That's why I was surprised reading this, because as I was reading it, I'm like, this seems like the Crisis. Right?
Yeah, I was like, this is crazy shit.
You know what's funny? This barely has anything to do with the actual Infinite Crisis.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So you guys
Yeah.
just brought us on a wild goose
Well,
chase.
it sets up a lot of things.
A lot of mostly thematic.
Yes.
What happens to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman sets up the position in Infinite Crisis.
Yes.
Okay.
So, as you alluded to, what we will be talking about is the Countdown for Infinite Crisis 80-page special, the OMAC Project, issues 1 through 6, and then parts of Superman Sacrifice, which is it ties into the OMAC Project. So, the only real backstory that we need to know here is that, as we talked about a while ago in Identity Crisis, Batman didn't agree with what the Justice League was doing and was mind-wiped. And at the end of that book, he found out...
He was mind-wiped by minor players in the Justice League. Like, there's a whole branch within the Justice League that was like, they were mind-wiping people in order to
Wait,
solve
which crisis
problems.
was that?
So that was Identity Crisis.
Identity Crisis.
It's easy to remember because the identity of the murderer is dumb.
Yeah. So just to clarify, what happened was all the C-listers in the Justice League had their own basically in their clique that was separate from the major heroes like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and they made decisions unilaterally together because Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman usually left whenever they weren't there for the glory or whatever.
And they said even when Batman came back, they were like, Batman is so stubborn that he would dissolve the League rather than let us do this thing he doesn't agree with.
So it was basically a question like, do we destroy the League? Or just because Batman's a fucking stick in the mud, or do we want mind wipe him and preserve this charade we have going on, where the League's all this happy family, in reality it has this weird politics going on in it.
Yes.
Someone in the background of their audio has birds chirping.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Okay.
I can't help it. I just love birds.
I'm surrounded by them. I'm like fucking like from a Disney princess or something.
Wow, that's the nicest thing you've said about yourself.
I'm a princess.
So first we're going to talk about Countdown to Infinite Crisis. It was an 80-page special that was actually priced at only $1, and it's written by Jeff Johns, Greg Rucka, and Judd Winnick with a myriad of artists, the first of which is Rags Morales, who did Identity Crisis. And the reason why I mentioned that it was $1 is because, a lot of times when there's events, DC will publish a big, hey, get hyped for this event, or comic companies do this all the time. Mm-hmm. And to compare it to modern times, the version of this that just came out last week was $10. So having it be an extra cheap instead of extra expensive comic showed that they were let's get people on board right away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And just for a quick little bit of extra backstory before because we have to establish the characters of this little play. Justice League International, we've mentioned them a few times. They show up in Return of Superman.
Because it's my favorite comic book of all time.
Yeah, it's funny because they're the Justice League that when people read Death of Superman, they're like, who are these guys? Where's Batman? Where's Superman? When in reality, they're much better than any other version of Justice League, including the most famous version. Ironically, the most famous version of the Avengers and Justice League are the worst because they're so established that they don't have much character development that you can do with them.
Mm-hmm. So the Justice League International was you get your Guy Gardners, your Blue Beetles, your Booster Golds, your Fire and Ices, all these characters that no one but me ever has heard of.
Yeah.
And and they were led by this guy named Maxwell Lord, who was just kind of this like
rich playboy.
He was kind of like this 80s business guy, playboy guy that would like manipulate everybody to just get them to do what he wanted. But he was still like at his heart like a good guy. But he was like he was like Batman without the like grimness of like manipulating everybody to get all the chess pieces lined up. And throughout the course of the run, he got these powers that let him control people, like push their minds a certain way, but it would always give him bad nosebleeds. And that's pretty much like the cast that we meet early on in this book.
Yes, and just to quickly explain, sorry.
How many times are we going to quickly explain this story?
That's like our catchphrase.
This is just to clarify some of the controversial decisions in the series. Because Justice League International was a fun series. Like, Maxwell Lord was a goofball. Blue Beetle and
that's interesting.
Mr. Gold were like if you watch Heroes of Crisis Heroes of Crisis coverage on our Patreon, you'll know they go like Rose Your Heroes, like they're kind of like bros kind of guys.
But they did still. It was a book that still got serious sometimes. Like I would compare it to like sitcoms like Scrubs that are like mostly fun, but then there'd be the like serious times. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I just to clarify, because as we get into it, this part of the conflict is Blue Beetle. He's trying to basically have people take him seriously as he's investigating a robbery into his warehouse. But everyone kind of remembers him as Justice League International goofball Blue Beetle. So everyone's kind of like, yeah, whatever, kind of dismissing him out of hand. And so as the story is going on, as he's investigating crime, we keep having these flash forwards as he finds. The flash forward is him coming across a computer, and this computer has information on all Justice League members and their secret identities.
Like it's like a huge database of like their weaknesses, their known associates, their abilities. Mm-hmm. I love Batman's power, genius.
So 4 days ago, before this happened, Blue Beetle is investigating, doing some investigations, but like he's working with Oracle, which is Barbara Gordon after she got her cripped by the Joker. And Oracle, like, she's nice to him, but she's kind of like sick of his shit. Like, he's asking for favors to do some research for him, and coming across payment receipts that say something about OMAC.
Yeah, so there's some like mystery that like all these like business transactions are tied into some like mysterious OMAC project.
Yes, and so
the entire framing device of this issue, this giant 80-page special, is that it's all taken from Blue Beetle's perspective, and all the narration, all the text boxes are his thoughts about it, which is like you really follow along him, and I along with him, and I was like, Blue Beetle rules after that. Me too.
I want to say, 5 years ago, Phil was like, Ryan's such a hipster. He likes such shitty characters. He likes characters like the Blue Beetle. Who could ever like him?
Well, you guys sure proved me wrong with this. I don't want to I didn't want to show my hand too early, but like I loved this so much.
And this is, I was reading this at the same time Phil was making fun of me for this. So it's so funny because Blue Beetle's like, nobody takes me seriously. Like, I'm a human being, damn it. Show me a little bit of dignity. And Phil's like, oh, you're reading about that fucking loser?
I think it's especially like interesting having like come off of a lot of bigger named characters. Like even after our Captain Marvel extravaganza, it's so like difficult to be like, yeah, Captain Marvel. Whereas here, he's immediately like sympathizable because, you know, he stands in the shadow of all these greater characters, which I really like because I was thinking about a lot of other stories can do like the grizzled, retired, like, or the no one takes them seriously anymore superhero, but it's rarely in consideration of a better superhero that's like always overshadowing them.
Yes, in real life.
Yeah, like, and he goes and like tries to talk to Batman. Batman literally is just like, I'm looking into it, and he's like, hey, this is pretty serious, something's going on, and he's like, get out, I know, I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah,
and it's crazy because like I'm always, you've probably heard me 1,000 times bring up the fact that I'm like, why don't these low level heroes get help from the big boys? Yeah. And he's trying so hard to get their help, and they're like, we have shit to deal with. Like, we don't respect you.
Yeah. And one of the things, just to really drive the point home, is that Blue Beetle's best friend, Booster Gold, he stole Blue Beetle's debit card. Yeah, and is taking like money out of the ATM, and he's like, I just need a flight to LA because I'm filming like a toothpaste commercial, and like I'm a sponsor for sunglasses. It's the only way I can like afford anything. Mm-hmm. And one thing that he mentions too is he's not a superhero anymore because he retired the costume after Sue Dibney died in Identity Crisis.
Yes. So just to quickly explain Blue Beetle and Booster Gold a bit, Blue Beetle is basically nerdier Batman who has less successful Batman, and that's important here because his company is actually going to financial problems, and so like he's actually like Oracle's like helping him, but she's like, you're gonna run out of money like really quickly.
Yeah. Especially as he's getting robbed, he's like, this actually is going to make me bankrupt.
And someone is funneling, they're laundering money from his company to somewhere else, and that's one of the problems he's having, where he's like, I need to go around and ask for help because it's like someone's just taking all my money and no one cares about him. They're like, get out of here, come on.
And Booster Gold it comes from the future. That'll be more relevant later on.
I feel like Booster Gold has like one of the dumbest premises because he was like a football player in the future that came back in time, and you're like,
well,
that's stupid.
that's his point. Is he was this jock who was this football player that got caught betting on his own games, so he went back in time and he's like, instead of just being a nobody washed up asshole, I'll just like steal all this future tech and just like be a superhero in the golden age of superheroes.
Yeah, and I think that the premise feeds into like him being a joke because he was trying to cheat his way into becoming a big famous person.
It works with this character. It makes him like, on one hand, it's like it's such like a dumb backstory, but on the other hand, it's like you do kind of feel for him because he's a loser of two ages, and he always feels guilty because a lot of people ask him, it's like, didn't you know about this? Because you're from the future, you would know who like this murderer is or who's doing this, and he just doesn't.
Yeah.
So he always feels bad about it.
Yeah. I love that too, because like there's always like the thought experiment that like if you were dumped 500 years back in the past, what would you do? And then people are always like, oh, I'll use my like advanced knowledge, and then you're like, do you know how to do anything? I'm like, I don't. Like I probably couldn't make fire.
Yeah. So Booster Gold was not swiping, but basically using Blue Beetle's ATM card without permission, and he's like a loser now. Booster Gold,
and he says like, I'm just so like embarrassed and tired of asking.
Yeah,
I thought you were like super rich, so I didn't think it would matter.
Yeah,
because now Booster Gold's like desperate for money. He's like doing ads. He's basically like a corporate shill now, doing ads for.
Yeah,
and so Blue Beetle goes to Maxwell Lord asking about it.
Yeah, because Booster's like, hey, you're having all this corporate trouble. We know someone who's an expert in corporate espionage, and that's when they go to Maxwell.
And Max is like, don't worry, I'll look into it. He acts like a smug asshole, like don't worry, I got it.
I heard you the first time, Ted. I also, like, after the Maxwell Lord meeting, they walk off and they go, Blue Beetle's talking about that he needs to investigate and he wants Booster's help, and Booster's like, I can't, I need to catch my flight. And then Blue Beetle's like, can it wait? I need your help on this. And he goes, Ted, I need this. And he just looks at him with like almost sad puppy dog eyes because he's like, I have no money, man.
Yeah.
I did enjoy both of those characters in this a lot.
Yep.
Like,
and
it's broken up into 5 chapters, and each time it's just like countdown, and the whole time I'm like, this is like, I was feeling tense about like what this was leading up to, and I was torn reading this because I didn't know this was supposed to be good or not. Like, you guys are always just like, here's a crisis to read, so I'm reading it, and so I'm reading this, and I'm like, maybe it's just because I'm reading this in the morning with a cup of coffee as opposed to like after a long day of work. So I'm like, I must just be in a good mood, and that's why I'm enjoying this so much. I was like, I couldn't believe myself. And then after I kept reading it, I'm like, no, this is just really good.
For those not following our Patreon, we were doing Booster Gold and Blue Beetle on Heroes in Crisis.
Oh, they're so bad.
And our finale episode, Phil said DC is the worst. It's trash. It's not really good. That was like last week.
It was so funny that I had said that, and then I was reading this, and I'm like, this is some of the best stuff we've read.
Same characters, Blue Beetle.
I know.
This is exactly what Sly and I are talking about, though. Like, you could take some shit character, and then good writers come in, and you're like, oh wait, this is like super good.
Yeah,
Darryl, I saw said in our group, our R4 group on Facebook, that after reading so much of the shit we read, like this felt like reading Shakespeare, and I was like, it really fucking did. Like, I was reading this, and I'm like, this is really good writing. Like, it's
so like Blue Beetle goes to see Batman. That's where he's asking about him, and like he doesn't get anything. And one of the details I like is like Alfred's bringing them all tea to drink, and Blue Beetle puts it down, and he's telling him it's like something's going on. The world's getting darker. Look at what's happened to us. Bruce said he couldn't wear the costume not after Sue. And I keep hearing things about Dr. Light, which is another person they mind wipe. And then he knocks over the tea. Batman's just like, get out.
No, Batman knocks over the tea, I think.
I think hearing the name Dr. Light is what did it to him.
Because Blue Beetle brought up the mind.
I think actually Batman slams the table as Blue Beetle is like, that's what I thought.
Oh, me too. I saw it as like, because there's just a hand touching tea.
But then you see in the next panel, Batman's hand is covered in tea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Batman basically was like triggered, and he like stands just saying, I said look into it. You shut the fuck up, Blue Beetle. Get the fuck out.
Yeah. And then we get such a sad scene where Oracle actually did listen to Ted, and she sent the whole Justice League, like everybody, to help him investigate his warehouse.
It just got broken into, but when they go to investigate, there's nothing there
at all.
everyone's like trying to be friendly and not be like fuck you, Blue Beetle.
But then it's like half an hour into it, their patience dries up, as has any chance of finding answers. I overhear Black Canary apologizing to Dr. Fate for wasting his time. Why are people always apologizing for me?
Yeah, I love that.
And it's like, oh man,
It's so good.
Because people are just like, sorry that this guy's so fucking dumb.
It's all these superheroes looking around. They're like, what are we fucking doing here?
Coming to Blue Beetle's warehouse.
But as soon as they leave, Blue Beetle gets attacked by what looks like a bunch of Jokers.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh yeah, it's comic books.
One other small touch is like Hal Jordan shows up as Green Lantern, and like he's actually like he scans for some radioactivity, and then Superman shows up, and I really like the way they talk about characters like Superman and Wonder Woman, and this is where DC excels, when they have these god figures and you see the perspective of other characters, because like when Ted's talking to Superman, he's like, it doesn't matter how many times I've met him. It's always like the first. Your throat gets a little dry. You overthink what you're going to say. He makes you feel useless and important at the same time. My voice cracks, and they're both kind enough not to notice. And it's like, this is Superman.
And when they draw Hal Jordan, Superman, and Wonder Woman throughout this issue coming in, the way it's drawn is like they take up most of the page. They're standing from above, and you see like little Blue Beetle like looking up like...
Yeah.
Like it's just drawn as like the sense of like power that comes from these main characters
looming over him, basically.
Yeah.
And this is when we find out that the thing that was stolen was 100 pounds of kryptonite.
Yes. So then the Madmen attack, and the Madmen are the Joker lookalikes.
I think they're only there because they're really early Blue Beetle villains. It's like, hey, it's a Blue Beetle story, and I guess these are his only villains.
So he gets overwhelmed, but then Booster Gold comes in his costume. And saves him, and the man
Bros before heroes, he says.
Yeah. No, fuck you. Fuck you.
No, he says, man, it's been a long time since I made A1 run. I used to love that.
Yeah, and he's in costume now.
And then he says, as soon as I stepped off that plane, I knew where I really need to be, so here I am.
And then he says, bros before hero.
He doesn't.
I actually thought, you know, it's funny because like Darryl just made that joke, but as soon as they like broed out here, I was like, a shitty writer would say something like bros before heroes here. But instead he said, so here I am. And then in Blue Beetle's head, he said he couldn't stop hearing people laughing at him. And in his narration, he says, finally, the laughter stops. And I'm like, that is how you write characters.
Yeah.
God damn.
And now we just get a quick cut that there is some sort of secret society of supervillains.
Lex Luthor, Black Adam, Deathstroke, they're all working together, and we don't know what they're doing yet.
Yes.
At least for the purpose of this story, this is like kind of the red herring of this story for me, where they got some plans and stuff, but it makes you think that they're behind what's happening, but they're not.
They're just monitoring, and they're keeping tabs of all the players.
Also, I hate that I'm at the point where I recognize like all these characters, except I haven't read anything with Dr. Psycho yet, so I guess
he's a Wonder Woman villain. He just like controls people's minds.
Okay. And when Phil said every chapter ends with a countdown, so every time a chapter ends, it says it's chapter title, and it says 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it cuts to the next chapter, the next page.
Yeah,
we're gonna spend the whole episode on this one.
Yeah. So what happened? So then they're at Blue Beetle's house, I believe.
Yeah, so they're at Blue Beetle's house, and they're just, like, looking into it, like, you know, going through, like, databases and stuff. And Booster reveals that he sees the Scarab, which is how the Golden Age Blue Beetle in, like, the 40s got his powers. And Ted...
wow, he's old.
Yeah.
I thought, like, he was a 70s character.
Well, this Blue Beetle, Ted Cord, is a Steve Ditko character. He created him when he created the Question in the 60s.
Night Owl is based off of Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
When Night Owl, the first Night Owl gets the shit beat out of him, that Night Owl is based off the first Blue Beetle. Like,
yeah.
That was pretty much explicitly Blue Beetle 1 and 2.
Yeah, so the original Blue Beetle had the Scarab that gave him, like, magic powers. It basically just made him, like, jump and punch good. And Ted's just like, I thought, you know, maybe I could get it activated because, you know, like, what's a superhero without powers? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just really wish, you know, I thought it might work for me, but it doesn't, so I just put it in a glass case.
Yeah, so Booster Gold offers to go do some computer looking into
because he's from the future, so he knew hacking growing up, like that's what they taught in schools.
Yeah,
which is like okay, that makes sense rather than like everyone just hacks well.
Yes, but as he takes over the computer blows up from the laser. Yeah, so basically a laser shoots from far away and basically blows up the computer, and the house ends up exploding right after.
And there's so many little touches, like Ted's trying to give Booster CPR, and he's like, "Wake up, come on, man, wake up!" And like the fire department comes, and they're like, "We could take it from here. Let us do our jobs." Mm-hmm. And it's just like Ted is so powerless throughout this whole book. But
yeah, like he says, I'm going to ride in the ambulance, and they say, "Are you family? We usually only allow," and then it goes back to like his narration.
Yeah.
Yeah. So He goes pick up the scarab that's in the
That's
wreckage.
now glowing.
Yeah, and the scarab starts directing him back to the warehouse, and
It leads to Shazam Land.
leads to Shazam Land. Yeah,
It leads him to Fawcett City, down the subway where Billy first met the wizard in Shazam.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And I'm like, oh man, because usually I'd make fun of this kind of stuff, just randomly appearing in a comic. An old man with all these statues talking about how the sins can't affect you now. And I'm like, I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, me too. I was like, this is a normal thing to happen.
so he goes to Shazam, and Shazam's basically like, "You're just immortal. Fuck off. Get out of here." And he basically teleports Blue Beetle away, but he keeps the scarab for himself.
I was like, what a dick. And then some other voice is like, hey, you're hanging out with mortals now? And he's like,
Shut up.
You know, he says, are you filled with questions too? And he said, and Shazam says, for the first time in 1,000 years, yes. And so you're like, what the hell is going on in this world?
So Blue Beetle gets teleported to a random location. He's like, "Fuck you, Shazam!" And he goes back to his ship, but it blows up before he can get back to it.
Yeah.
Poor fucking guy.
It just like anytime he thinks he's gonna get a little bit of reprieve, like something blows up in his face.
Yeah.
Like he meets Booster, Booster's gonna help him out, Booster blows up and goes to the hospital. And then he goes to see Shazam, Shazam doesn't help him, he goes to get on his ship blows up.
Also, every episode starts or near the beginning has another one of the Justice League main characters that he's looking through their files. So like the first one was Superman or Batman, then he sees Superman. Now this one starts with him looking through Wonder Woman. And I love how this like database like classifies their powers like by like alpha, beta like numbers. So they're like telepathy, beta 2, animal specific for Wonder Woman. And I'm like, yeah, like it makes sense. You'd want to like record like what specific power levels each
Type of
person
telepathy
had.
they
It's
have.
also a great way, if you're very new to comics, it's a great way to, like, maybe you didn't know that Wonder Woman had, like, empathy towards animals. You know, like, little things like that are just like, hey, new fan, read this
That's
event.
a good point. Yeah. That does come in handy.
Yeah.
So speaking of Wonder Woman, Blue Beetle gets taken to the Justice League Watchtower on the moon, and Wonder Woman basically is like talking to him, and as she's talking to him,
She's actually the one person that's like being nice, and like his narration boxes bring up too that it's like everyone there like pretty much loves Wonder Woman. It's the way she says your name, like she knows you, knows everything about you, the best and the worst. Like she knows you and loves you anyway. And she's like, okay, like I believe something is happening, and I have to go back to the embassy, but like inform me on what's happening.
Yeah, and Martian Manhunter is there too, and he's just like, "Blue Beetle, here, get the fuck out of my watchtower!"
Yeah, immediately. He's like, you have recovered? Then you will be leaving. That's all he
The
says.
thing that's even so sad is they get an emergency call from another comic book where it's
Another comic.
yeah, where
Please, we need more sales.
Yeah, Adam Strange is like, come to, fight the Ranthanagar War, on sale now. And Ted hears Martian Manhunter call in everybody. Adam Strange is like, everybody you have, and he doesn't call Ted.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll call everyone who can make a difference.
And also, Martian Manhunter was on the same team as Blue Beetle. He was part of the international team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but Blue Beetle and Booster Gold stole all his favorite cookies, and he hulked out and destroyed a city block. So
forget it. I don't like this anymore.
Yeah, I would say like don't bring up other comments. let me just have this. Also, I did like this is when I really was like, this is why high tier power characters can't ever deal with shit, because like this is an example of, you see like on another planet a giant war with people getting exploded, and like of course they're not going to be like, oh, your warehouse got raided, sorry, we have to leave these millions of people to die.
So Ted goes back home and he's sitting in the ruins of his life, and he's like, I'm not a kid anymore, I used to think being a hero was easy, and he's sitting there and
cleaning his goggles.
He's cleaning his goggles and he accidentally breaks them.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh great,
Like I have the money to get another.
Yeah, and he sees that there's something hidden in the glasses.
A bug.
Yeah, he goes to Blue Beetle and he's like, what happened to
So he goes to Booster Gold.
Booster Gold, yeah. And he goes to Booster Gold and he says, oh, what happened to your... Booster Gold's in the hospital. And he goes to Booster Gold saying, what happened to your like time-traveling psychic robot, Skeet?
He has like a sassy robot buddy that's also from the future.
And he's like, oh, Skeet. And Booster Gold's like, I don't know what happened to Skeet. But he shows him the goggles and it's a piece of...
Like it Skeets' technology, like a part.
It's not even just he says, I don't know what happened to Skeets. He's just like, I haven't seen him in a long time. I just assume he abandoned me like everybody else.
Yeah, and Skeet was supposed to monitor, so this part of Skeet that's on this goggle is probably monitoring Blue Beetle's progress. Mm-hmm. And Booster goes like, I gotta go with you, gotta help you, gotta...
And it's like that cliched moment where he like rips the IV out and he's like, that's it, now it's personal. But then he collapses because he's still like super hurt.
And then he collapses and the nurse comes in, or like the doctor, and they're like, what are you doing? They're like, he has to have bed rest. And he's like, he was just trying to help me. You have to promise you'll tell him something for me. Tell him it's not his fault. Remember, that's what I said.
And that I never had a better friend than him.
Yeah, that's really like,
bros before heroes.
So then, chapter 5.
Oh my god, I hate Heroes and Crisis so much more after reading that.
So what happens is he tries to call Oracle, and Oracle's like done with shit. She won't even respond.
Yeah.
So he has to go track, gets the signal back.
No, my favorite is he says
yeah.
that I call Batman next, and Batman answers, and then he puts me on hold. I hang up on him. It saves him the trouble of doing it to me.
So crazy to me.
So
I mean, not
pathetic.
crazy, but I'm like, it's so sad that Batman's just like, I'm gonna put him on hold till he hangs up.
Yeah.
And so leads to a castle.
In like the Swiss Alps?
Yes, Swiss
Yeah.
Alps. And Blue Beetle basically just infiltrating like a Metal Gear Solid type scenario where he's just sneaking past the guards.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about it is he's good at it. Like, he doesn't get caught. He gets in.
Yeah, and this is where the flash forward was him finding the computer with all of our information, and we finally catch up to that moment. And as you look at the information, he finds his file.
Well, first, even before that, some of the little touches that I really like is he's looking at Booster's file, and he's like, but they understand nothing. Calling me Michael's Booster's real name, associate is criminal. Calling his murdered sister an associate is obscene. And it's just this, like, this is the data, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
maybe if your friends only know from the Wikipedia page about Blue Beetle and they think he's lame, maybe they don't know the whole story, you know?
Yeah, everyone's reduced to factoids, and he's
Yeah,
like, this
exactly.
is who we are. We are more than what these descriptions are.
Yeah.
And then he goes check his file, and he says, for a moment, I don't know where to laugh or cry because it says he's deceased.
Yeah.
And it says that because a voice comes out from behind, clapping, saying, "Bravo, Ted."
And he says, I know who it is before I see him. Too late to do me any damn good. The one associate not listed between my name or Booster's or Batman's.
It's Maxwell Lord.
It's
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
My lord.
Yeah, and so Maxwell Lord, he's like, put down the gun, and Blue Beetle
Blue Beetle has this, like, light gun that's non-lethal.
Yeah.
But what I like here is he's holding the gun and he's like, I don't have anything to lose, so I'm not putting my gun down. And he says for the first that, like, his voice doesn't crack, because in the past he kept being like, I'm trying to be brave, but I keep like.
Well, it's in front of like Superman and stuff, where it's
Yeah.
like, whereas like here, finally
Yeah.
he has to be brave, and he's able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then Maxwell Lord gets a nosebleed, and if you know anime, that means Maxwell Lord is really horny. No, it means it's a sign that he's using his powers of mind control. And basically, he forces Blue Beetle to drop the gun.
And the thing that I love about this is Max is like, it's a small price to pay getting these nosebleeds. You wouldn't believe how powerful I've become. I can make Superman kill for me if I wanted to. And Blue Beetle says, no, you couldn't. I may be second string, but the first string will take you down. You can bet your life on it. And I love that even at this, like, desperate moment, Blue Beetle's still like, yeah, but they're real heroes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the A-Team will kick your ass.
Yeah.
And so Maxwell Lord says, like, no, you're not a second stringer. I knew it. I knew you'll be the one to find you. You were Batman, but my feeling will be you, because I always know everyone underestimated you, basically. And he reveals that this organization that behind all this is an organization called Checkmate. So a little backstory: Checkmate is basically DC's shield.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's weird because I thought Star Labs was DC's kind of like, but then it makes more sense for Shield because it's a government agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's not a government agency; it's an international agency. And
that Max has been, like, slowly, like, hostile takeover.
Yeah, and of all the pieces on the board, I am king.
Yep.
Yes.
And so he's like,
Join me and we can rule this galaxy together as father and son.
no. He wants the opposite. He wants to prevent all superheroes from joining together as father and son because he fears the rise of what DC calls metahumans.
Yeah.
Superheroes.
This was cool because it reminded me. It's like throwback to like the Civil War stuff we read, where you have humans. I mean, he's a meta.
I think this is before Civil War, isn't it?
It's around the same time.
It's right around the same time.
Yeah, well, I meant like throwback for me, like having read
yeah.
Civil War a few years ago. Reading this, I'm like, this is cool because I always like this concept where Maxwell Lord is like. He's showing up pictures of Superman and Wonder Woman. He's like, these are literal gods, and if they wanted to destroy us, they could. Like, this is a huge problem. We need to monitor them. We need to control them. And you can help me with this because you're also not a meta.
You're just a regular guy with technology.
And Maxwell brings up the fact that you're not a human either. You're metahuman. And Maxwell, it's pretty obvious Maxwell's supposed to be a hypocrite scenario. He's like, no, I can be trusted. It's okay. Like,
It's one of those where it's like, I'm using my power for good, though.
Yeah.
yeah. And so Blue Beetle's like, fuck you, I'm not gonna help you, and he punches.
And while they're even before that, while they're doing this, it's the computer goes blank, and Ted crashed the computer and wiped all the files.
Yes, and so Blue Beetle starts trying to escape, and he's being basically swarmed by all the members of Checkmate, and he's able to hold his own until he reaches one man that Maxwell Lord turns to and says, "Download," and the man turns into what looks like I'm not describing it.
It's
Kind
like
of
a blue gooey robot type of dude.
Yeah, but the best way to compare it is like it's something similar to the T-1000. Basically, he turns it looks like a normal human, but he turns into like liquid metal kind of thing.
Or Chaos from Sonic Adventure.
Yes, exactly. You got
or
it.
like the Yellow Devil, but skinny.
Yeah.
And
Blue
so
Devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this thing just beats the shit out of Ted.
And it also says when he activates him, he says OMAC Protocol Blue Beetle recipient, and the guy turns into this thing, and he has like countermeasures for Blue Beetle's like flare gun or whatever.
Yeah.
So when I first read this, I was like, oh, so he said the name, and now he like activates maybe like anti Blue Beetle weaponry.
Spoilers: these guys are like Sentinels, basically. They have protocols for every hero, and they can counteract.
Oh, I didn't think Sentinels had protocols for every hero. I thought they were just big tough robots.
No,
there's variants of Sentinels because some Sentinels were like cheap knockoffs, but there are Sentinels because like, everyone makes Sentinels, but some of them are cheap knockoffs, and some of them are highly advanced, like killer machines.
So then Ted gets knocked out, and he wakes up, and he's completely like tied up and everything, and Max gives him one last chance, and he's like, I have this spy satellite that's keeping tabs on everybody.
And he says again, like, because again, what I really liked about this is he's being convincing, I think, to the reader, where he's like, all I want to do is put Earth's destiny in the hands of humans, not people pretending to be human.
Yeah, in the hands of people like me and people like you. And Ted's narration is, my name is Ted Cord. I am the second man to call himself the Blue Beetle. I tell myself there will be a third, and I hope whoever he or she may be, they do better at it than I have. And he says out loud, you want me to join you? That's why you're telling me all this? Join me or die time, is that it? And Max says, that's it exactly, and raises the gun. And Blue Beetle says, rotten hell, Max.
And then he gets
Max
shot in the head.
Shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
And he says, what a waste. And he activates Project OMAC and says, it's time to save the world from itself.
And I was like, because I did not see the death coming. I feel like I know so much like about like comics coming up. Like I knew what happened to Max Lord before coming into this.
I didn't know any of this shit. I was like expecting another like shitty crisis, whatever, like going back in time, and I'm like, this is so interesting and cool.
But I was bought in. I thought this was going to be like a good, like this whole series would follow along, because I know like in 52 that like a lot of superheroes are gone, so it has to focus on people like Blue Beetle. So I was like, oh, I can't wait for him to be in it, and then he gets shot in the head right here and dies. So I was like, all right.
It's like how we've talked about though with like the death of Captain Marvel making me actually care about him for once. Yeah. Like this, I like Blue Beetle more from this story than most characters we've read for this show, because like one good writing job can do more than having 1,000 comics that are just like bland whatevers.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to just say about a book like this, because Maxwell Lord, this was a very controversial book.
Yes, I want to really quickly explain that. So this was so controversial that the writers of Justice League International, they're releasing a reunion series for Justice League International called I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League, I believe.
Yes.
Because I it sounds silly, but it was supposed to be a joke book. It's like a Marvel, like I can't even know. There's not even been a Marvel movie series that's been that comedic, I don't think.
Yeah, but it's very fun. It's like a revival, and it's the same old creative team.
Yeah, and they changed the ending of that series after they found out about this ending, and had it so it's Maxwell Lord and Blue Beetle like arm around each other saying, isn't it funny, we're best friends, just to say fuck you to DC for making this change.
So this is a really controversial choice, but I actually really like it. And one of the things I just want to point out is I always complain about like everything being dark and gritty and cynical. I would make an argument that this is not a cynical book, even though there's a character that's good turning evil and killing people and like killing a beloved hero, because at the sense of it though, this book is still a story about a hero who wants to do good. And even though the world is like, fuck you.
It's not mean-spirited.
Yeah, it's not mean-spirited. And even though like Blue Beetle gets shot in the head and like that's not fun, it to me it doesn't feel like it's punishing him for being good. It's like rewarding him for like, it's like you get this good story.
Yeah, like he did the right thing by trying to fight back against him and standing up to him. Like it was a valiant death.
And he's incorruptible.
Yeah. And even though like this doesn't jive with the history of these characters, it makes us part of the core of the story is that you have to have a character to joke like Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. Like it's kind of like Blue Beetle wants to grow up in this series. He just doesn't want to be a joke anymore, and it's playing on that history, and it's using it for dark ends. But it works because it's using that history to make the narrative more believable. It's believable that Blue Beetle be a joke because he literally was a comedic character until now. Like Phil and Darryl were like, oh, they stole Oreos, what a fucking idiot. Yeah, the stories were like that. They fucking stole Oreos from characters. Like they really were a fucking joke.
And it's not like Maxwell Lord is like, I've been evil the whole time. It's that, like, I realized that things were fucked up. And it's actually later on, in a later story, like, way after, we're not going to talk about it, but it's revealed that his mom actually died during the Death of Superman Doomsday Raid, and that's what convinced him that...
it was Coast City.
Oh, yeah, his mom was in Coast City.
Remember we were saying, like, Coast City? Like, you see that happen? Like, how do you not traumatize the world?
And that's what makes him realize that these people need to be kept in check.
That's smart. Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's dark, but it refrains from being like edgy, like you guys keep saying.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
if this was Mark Millar,
right?
like he would have like showed up at his house and he'd be like, "I already fucked your mom, Blue Beetle," and then like Blue Beetle's like ass falls out, and like it was just.
And then Blue Beetle gets pregnant, and he can't abort it because his womb will explode.
No, I was thinking if this was Mark Millar, because one of the scenes I like is the fact that Diana, Wonder Woman, that she believes in him and trusts him. If this was Mark Millar, she would have not believed him. She would have said, "I saw your dick, and it's really small."
Yeah, you're a cuck, and
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the OMAC Project, and even with the Superman Wonder Woman crossovers, it's all written by Greg Rucka.
Yeah, and we spent a long time on the last one, even though like it's a lot of build up, because that comic is actually really good, and I would recommend even like that as a standalone to read if you have a modicum of interest in this.
So the only backstory that I want to give for this is the OMAC Project primarily follows Sasha Bordeaux, who is like, she's part of Checkmate. She was Maxwell Lord's like right-hand woman, and she's, I guess, like the Black Knight, I think. They like whatever. They have this whole chess thing.
She's King's Knight.
they have like a black king and queen and a white king and queen, and then each of them have like a knight that is like their
Right hand.
Yeah. And she's a Greg Rucka character that he'd been writing in many books for a while. She was Bruce Wayne's bodyguard that was assigned to him by Wayne Corp, and then she eventually found out that he was Batman, and then was like almost like a partner until he like went through a gritty Batman phase and banished her forever, and that's when she became a spy.
It's Batman's typical thing, right? Where he's like, I can't love anyone, get away.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I like the name of this first issue, So That Men May Live.
Mm-hmm. So it starts with Sasha, and it's her internet monologue realizing that this isn't what she signed up for. She's not like in this with Maxwell Lord.
She's basically pretending to be super loyal to him no matter what, regardless.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole time, like, all her dialogue is like, the king is the king. We have to listen to him. But she's disposing of Ted's body, and Max is now showing just how much of his computer, this whole big computer system. It's called Brother Eye, and it's
Brother Mark 1 first.
Oh, okay. It's Roman numeral I.
I like the twist because then they're like, it's Brother I, and I'm like, same name, but like how AM became from Allied Master Computer to AM. I love AI that becomes sentient.
Not in real life.
Yeah, not in real life. So this is when we reveal the origin of this satellite. This is the satellite that Batman made.
Yeah, Batman made the satellite after the Identity Crisis because he felt like, I don't trust these metahumans anymore either. Like, fuck superheroes. They mind wiped. Yeah, so I'm going to monitor them. I'm going to be watching the Watchmen.
Yep.
And so Max is controlling it, and we get a lot of now, because he's like killed Blue Beetle and had his like agents like dispose of the body. There is some, like shaking in the ranks where some people are like going up to Sasha like, this whole thing's kind of fucked up, and she's like clearly on camera being like, no, it's not.
I always appreciate when you try and flesh out an organization so that everyone's not like, yeah, it's just like when you obey Penguin's orders and you're like, or Joker, and you're like, isn't there a sane person here that's like, this is kind of like fucked up, what's happening? Like,
where are the human beings?
Yeah, here it's great that they're like, Max has been, because originally they talked about that there's supposed to be checks and balances, that there's 2 kings and 2 queens and they're supposed to be like kind of equal, and Max has been consolidating power. So one of the queen's knights comes to talk to Sasha about it, and she's like, this is wrong, like your boss is doing bad.
Yeah. And I really like the way the scene transitions happen, because usually what it is it's the computer spying on a superhero, and then it zooms in on them, and then it cuts to that scene. Mm-hmm. So we get Booster Gold just getting like harassed by some guy on the bus, being like, you're a fucking loser because you don't want to, tell me about all the hot Justice League ass that you got. And Wonder Woman comes down, and she says, Blue Beetle, have you seen him? And Booster's like, no. And she's like, I haven't seen him in like a few days. And he's like, oh, we better go. But he doesn't have any of his like gear with him because he just got out of the hospital. So she has to carry him around.
Yeah.
And she's like, I believed him. And, there's a lot of like Booster, like, I just stayed in a hotel bed, and not a hospital bed. And now, like, he's gone and nobody believed him. And so she's like, I believe him, but I feel that something's wrong. So let's go investigate.
And as Ryan said, the scene transitions are all like every time they switch between Batman and Sasha and all these people, it's like the eye thing.
Yeah, so you can see like Blue Beetle. I mean, the eye can see everything pretty much.
And what I really liked about it too is there's a lot of just like computer like green text on all these screens, and a lot of the time it actually gives you insight into what's going on, and I really liked that. Like throughout this, I kept looking through it, and it's like it's saying basically what the computer is quote unquote thinking,
calculating.
Yeah.
And it's really cool.
So now Maxwell Lord tells Sasha to spread some evidence around to like set up like false trails and everything. But what she does do is she takes Blue Beetle's goggles, the broken ones that were on him when he died, and she sends them to Batman with a note: "You don't control it anymore." And Alfred's like, "What does that mean?" And Batman says, "It means Ted Kord is dead, Alfred, and none of us are safe. None of us." And it shows this like huge, very ominous, scary-looking satellite that is the Brother Mark I satellite.
It's got a red eye.
It has a big eye on it. And
Also, the icon for it was like this big eye, and Batman throughout this whole issue has been trying to like log on, and it won't let him in, and he keeps trying to talk to him. He's like, "Brother, why won't you talk to me?"
And just all his screen is just a big eye.
Yeah.
And that's the end of issue 1.
Yeah, and we see that the satellite's there's like a network of them around the planet.
So issue 2 opens with Batman remembering what happened back when he got his mind wipe, where he's like, "I remember because it was Sue. I came back." And it's about like how they were wiping Dr. Light's mind, and then Batman came in and he's like, "What are you doing?" And then they had to wipe his mind. And I like that Batman brings up that he goes into a narration about how memory is a slippery beast. It can't be controlled, not with drugs or emotion or magic. With the right triggers, with enough pressure, cracks appear, light shines in. Each new crack raises questions, and each question creates new cracks. And it's cool because what happens is it shows like just prior, like a couple pages ago, it shows Batman trying to like running at them to stop them from mind wiping Dr. Light, and then here now it's replaced with like there's Catwoman, she's holding down Two-Face, and then
that's Huntress actually.
Whatever.
Oh. And he goes to throw like a boomerang and Poison Ivy spraying him, so it's like clear.
Oh, you mean a batarang?
and it's all the same stances as he was taking against the Justice League in the other one. So it's like these are all bringing back to him, like Darryl saying.
That's the same, and that's a reference. Remember in Identity Crisis? That's how Dr. Light remembered when everybody ganged up on him the same way.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
And then he continues saying, leaving the truth after each piece falls away. And he says, "Do you understand? They broke the promise. And if they couldn't be trusted, then by extension, none of us could."
Yep.
It doesn't matter who was responsible. What mattered was that it happened to begin with, and I was damned if I was ever going to let that happen again. And it cuts to Brother Mark I in the sky, and so it's like it's showing you like this obviously motivated him to make this AI system.
Yeah, and not only that, but like the narration ties in with him because he was telling the Justice League of America right now. He's like, "So I set up this satellite and it's been watching you."
Yeah, so like as he's narrating, it cuts to Booster Gold, him narrating at the Watchtower to Superman, Booster Gold, and Wonder Woman.
And he explains that he made the satellite, all that exposition, but then
He's like, "I don't control it anymore, and someone stole it."
Yeah, and he also pulls out the broken goggles and he's like, "Blue Beetle's dead."
Booster's like, "You got him killed," and he tries to attack Batman.
Because he's in his booster suit.
He calls him a son of a bitch.
Yeah, and then Superman blocks the ray, and he's like, "Blame will be late later." And Booster goes like, "Who are you kidding? No, it won't." He has to admit he was wrong first, and there's like an awkward silence.
Yeah, Batman doesn't say anything. He's like, "I'm not wrong."
Yeah, and sometimes he tries to change the subject. So still brother one.
Yeah.
And then we cut now to Maxwell Lord watching this conversation, and I'm like, man, how does these satellites are really getting in everywhere? I'm like, how do they see through like everything?
They're
and
everywhere.
get audio. How do they get audio?
They were designed by Batman.
Yeah.
Remember Dark Knight?
That's still
because he could have bugged everywhere.
In the movies, Batman was able to do that in the movies of Dark Knight. Remember?
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
like for a comic book budget, you can do definitely.
And also, I assume if Batman was designing it, he probably used a lot of the same kind of software that he used in the Justice League Tower. But
So
there is a level of like it's Batman.
Yeah.
Max Lord's trying to figure out how, like, he's trying to deduce how they got the goggles, and he decides to distract them from like figuring more stuff out by killing another hero in, was it Russia?
It's actually they said this beforehand, but we should quickly explain. Red Rocket was another member of the
Rocket Red.
Rocket Red was another member of the Justice League International along with Blue Beetle. He was like Soviet Russia's like ambassador, whatever you want to call it. And he was fighting earlier in the story. He was fighting this villain, and now OMAC is sent to kill the villain that Rocket Red was fighting. And they say like somebody just killed this former adversary of the Justice League. Like, what happened here?
Yeah, so he activates OMAC, and he's just another random guy turns into that like blue goopy chaos guy.
That's how he's seeing a lot of the stuff too. I forgot to mention.
Oh yes, because
when he's watching the fight, he's watching a fight between Overthrow and Rocket Red earlier, and a person in the crowd is watching this, and he is seeing through their red eyes. So he seems to have seeded like people around the world that are like sleeper cells, which can see. He can see through them and then turn them into these blue things when he needs to. And also at the same time, the computer is on the case of who sent these goggles, and it's like searching through all the knights, all the king and queens, and you see it just going through, and it's like who could it be? Who could it be? And we're like, oh fuck, Sasha's gonna get caught.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so then they have a meeting inside of Checkmate with the other kings and queens, the White King and Black Queen.
Before he even goes to the meeting, you see the brother is listening to their conversation. You see in the text it's saying we all agree that he's out of control. We're talking about a coup. Blah blah blah. And
he's
so
destroying us, preserving, and then the computer goes error, inconsistent sub, perverting the whole organization. Like the computer can't even pick up on everything 100% and needs to substitute words.
And then it fixes it like once it's like what makes sense. It's really cool the way it's done because you're like, this is like how an AI would process this stuff.
Yeah. And they go into this board meeting and basically it's Maxwell Lord. He decides to pretty much kill everyone in here. But I love Sasha's.
He doesn't just kill everyone. He controls someone else and makes them kill.
Yeah, the Queen's Knight Midnight, who was questioning Maxwell Lord to Bordeaux before.
Also, they don't know that he can mind control. They don't know he's a meta.
Yeah.
And it was great because like Sasha immediately deduces what's going to happen, and as they're just talking, she's already sitting there figuring out it's like they're here to challenge him. That's why Midnight's here. Black Queen's Night ready to commit regicide, which means she plans to shoot me too. And I don't want to kill her because she wants to stop Maxwell Lord. But if he survives, he's going to torture her. So she's trying to figure out what the right thing to do is when you're an undercover agent.
Yeah,
and I love it because like Bordeaux's basically forced to watch. There feels like there's moments where she could come in and save them, like they're begging her, please help us, he's out of control, and she just stands there stone face as everyone's getting murdered in front of her.
Yeah, this is probably my one writing part that I was like questioning the most out of the whole story arc because I'm like, based on what's going to happen, where she like immediately gets like is revealed as a traitor and gets caught like right after this, I'm like. I guess she didn't know she was about, but she openly betrays him like next episode, like next issue.
Well, he also it showed from his perspective earlier in the issue that she was one of his top suspects because he was like it's somebody on the inside and it cuts to him watching footage of her. Mm-hmm. So like I think that Max was just ahead, like he was a step ahead of her at this point.
But like why not? Because like it's not even next issue. It's like right now she betrays him right after this. So I'm like, why not betray him like 5 seconds earlier and maybe like save the organization? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Like she doesn't. She betrays him, but she keeps. It's under the guise of like espionage and stuff because she gets caught. Because what happens is after this happens, she goes to meet with Batman and tell him what's going on, and she gets caught by like the OMACs get sent in, and then your cover is blown there. Like she probably thought her cover was going to last longer than it did.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, instead of just like pulling a gun, being like, I was the one that did it. Which is, again, what like a bad writer would do rather than like that her cover got blown.
Yeah. And so, she does go meet with Batman. They make out, and then these blue guys jump to the ceiling, and their task is to...
He wants Sasha captured back and eliminate Batman. So, like, I guess Batman's dead.
And I love, too, again, it's watching this hooded figure, and it's trying to figure out, it's like insufficient data, who is this? And then it's like... 9-point match with Sasha Bordeaux, like just by like the gestures and the side of the face. Man, it's so good. I keep saying it because I'm just, out of everything we've read, like very few things I've said I loved because I'm like a lot of things I enjoyed, but they didn't spark like joy in my heart. and this I was reading this and I'm like this sparked joy in me.
It's the coffee.
It probably was.
It's the combination, the coffee and the fact that this is good.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a combination of your state of mind and also the thing is I guess it is.
So issue 3. So now we start out with this fight scene where the blue people are fighting, Sasha and Batman, and she's kind of doing exposition here where she's like, these are controlled by the Brothers Network and didn't you make them, so didn't you make these guys? And he's like, no, I didn't make this, I just made the satellites.
Yeah.
And so she kind of tells him, it's checkmate. They kill Blue Beetle.
I like that too. Immediately, Batman suspects her of trapping him. when they appear. He's like, you did this.
Yeah. And so he like basically gets to grapple away, but Sasha gets grabbed by the blue people, and which we now I think by this point
He doesn't just grapple away. Yeah, the OMACs actually they fight him for a bit, and then they grab him, they break his belt, and then they cuff him with his own handcuffs that Mr. Miracle had designed.
Well, even before that, this is when Batman he grabs like this like blade. There's a sword. I don't know where this sword comes from.
They were inside some kind of.
But they were actually in Ted Kord's warehouse.
Yeah.
He pulled a sword from his belt, it looks like.
Oh, I guess. Okay, I guess.
It's that sword.
No, it's that sword that turns into a bouquet of roses from the last issue we read of Batman.
Sure. So this is when he stabs the OMAC and realizes that, it's bleeding. There's a person in there.
Yeah.
It's not just a machine. And that's when they like you said, they cut the belt, and he realizes that he's using my tactics. This is like what I would do. They cuff him and they throw him in the river.
Yeah, they blast him in the face with the laser, and then he falls into the river. And then you think it's like, how's he get out of this? And Superman just flies in and picks him up.
Yeah.
And so they're like, Superman's like, where did they go? And they're like, they vanished?
And Superman says that he's fought them before in Metropolis, which is probably like, in
a previous. It was a previous one, because they have. If you see on the back, they have a reading order. In the back of these issues, they have a reading order to Infinite Crisis. They had a ton of like different tie-ins where people fought like OMAC and other different stuff was happening. Like they always were like major events coming. What's that gonna tie and what's not? And it's always like all this stuff keeps coming in. So
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, I feel like in this era, a lot of it is much more self-contained and easy to follow than like usual. Like even though like Superman references like I fought this guy before, it never that's all he says about
nothing
it.
crucial. Nothing crucial happened in that fight. It was just he fought it.
Yeah. And it does reinforce to the heroes that like if they disappeared, they might have like Batman's like they vanished back into the crowd, which suggests that they're people, especially since he saw the blood. And then we cut to space, and this was again what I was like, this is something that I think again a bad writer would skip or like do a bad job. But I'm like, all the people who can fly in space are looking for that fucking satellite, because why would you not do that? And so you have like Guy Gardner, you have Booster Gold.
So first you have Booster Gold and Wonder Woman, and then Guy Gardner shows up. He's the brass Green Lantern that we've talked about.
Yeah, and this is important. And Guy Gardner has no interest in looking for a satellite. He tells Wonder Woman, like Wonder Woman's like, we have to find a satellite, and Guy Gardner's like, shut the fuck up, you dumb broad, basically.
Yeah, he like says a bunch of shitty stuff.
Yeah, I could stare at your rack for hours. I'm like, fuck this guy.
But the main thing that he says is, he says, Booster, what are you doing out here? Like, we should be finding who killed our buddy.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman's like, well, and he's like, which part of shut up didn't you understand? I'm thinking we get the rest of the crew, Fire, Max, the others. We go kick some major ass. And basically Guy Gardner's like, listen, I know you're a big hero and like, everything's great, but like he was one of ours. You were never part of our league. It's up to us to bring him in. Like, this is something we have to do.
He's saying it to Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman basically is having none of it. They start fighting. And Blizzard goes like...
It's because he uses his ring to put, like, his finger up in her face to be like, shut up, what didn't you understand? To, like, shush her. And so she just punches him into a nearby satellite and blows it up, saying, you do that again, and I'll remove that ring from your hand permanently.
Yeah, and Booster Gold basically breaks it up, saying, what is he accomplishing? And he basically, like, he sides, reluctantly with Guy Gardner saying, yeah, I know you're being nice, Wonder Woman, but you really weren't part of our group. Like, this is for us to deal with. Sorry. And he leaves.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about this, too, that, like, a lot of times we talk about how, like, there's so many shitty forced fights.
Yeah.
This fight between Wonder Woman and Guy Gardner is 2 panels.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, like,
it's a punch.
It's a flex.
Yeah.
Like, they're flexing each other. Really.
It also makes sense because Guy Gardner would not be polite to Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman would not take his shit. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, no, like, it works, but it's not like, okay, we need an action scene.
Yeah.
It is to show, like, they will have tension, and then we could get out of the way.
Yeah.
We cut now to back to the headquarters of Checkmate. Sasha has been captured, and she's in a cell with the Black Queen's Knight, who shot all the people under mind control.
Yeah.
Yep. And Maxwell Lord shows up, and
the thing is, like, he shows up and then he takes out of like a little compartment just like a tissue, and she immediately starts thinking, oh god, he's gonna do it, he's gonna take my mind from me, because he always takes the tissue out to wipe his nosebleed when he starts mind controlling.
Yeah, he gets so horny.
She says, like, she feels the pressure building, the buzzing gets worse, it's like claws on a chalkboard, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, and she's like, how? He says, how can you fight me? Well, there's only one person who can fight me. How can you fight me? And he gets mad, he leaves. And then we come back to the Justice League, and Wonder Woman's like, yeah, I couldn't find it.
Wonder Woman goes back to Superman, Batman specifically.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, it's hiding somewhere. And then we see that Rocket Red is cut in half, and they find him.
No, Rocket Red.
Not Rocket Red. The
guy
other
Rocket
guy.
was fighting.
Overthrow.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Overthrow does have red on him, so
Yeah.
I could get
Yeah.
They're both Russians.
I didn't know who was who either.
Ruskies all are red. They're all the same.
Yeah.
And Max sees that Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman now know about Checkmate, and Batman's like, I'm going to find them, shut them down. And Max is like, it's too early, I didn't want to do this yet, but now we have no choice.
Yep. And he says, locate target Alpha 1. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I think I know who this is.
Yeah,
And
encode
he's
is
like,
previous. Encoding.
Yep.
Begin recording.
you've always been the one we can count on. All of us, we rely on you to protect us, to save us. But you've made enemies, my son, powerful enemies. You know this better than anyone. They mean you harm. They mean the people you love harm. And they're on the move, son. At this very moment, they're on the move. And you see his nose start to bleed as he's giving this monologue. And he says, unless you are strong, unless you heed my warning and do what must be done, all who rely upon you, who trust in you, could perish. And we see Clark Kent seeing this on a screen. And he says, don't worry, Father. I'll keep us safe.
Yeah.
To be continued in Superman.
So this is when we jump over to Adventures of Superman 642.
This is because these next two issues are really important, and I hate that they're not part of this like OMAC series, because I could not imagine jumping from 3 to 4. Like, Sly left us a note that was like, hey, you guys need to read these two things, and like if I had not read that note, I would have been both like confused and also ruins the surprise of what happens.
One thing I want to point out in the trade
Yes, the
paperback,
trade's collected in the order we're reading it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
The trade.
So there's like the only way you could have missed these is if you read it only
Single
in
issues.
single issues as
But
it was coming
that's
out.
still,
And,
like-
but Darryl, you're not a single issues reader. Like the people who read single issues do this all the time. So like
and I'm sure that they usually cut these out for the trade, but I'm pretty positive at the end of the
They did.
issue
They
it
have
would
a- they
say
have
like
narration.
continue the story in Adventures of Superman 642 or whatever. Yeah, but I understand that like I do wish it was all super contained, but like if you read this anytime but the day it came out, it's not going to be.
I think it's fine because this format is not for Darryl. Darryl would read this in trade. You would be a trade reader, and in trade
Yes.
they collect it in the order of reading it. So like this isn't for you anyway. I think this is the best of both worlds.
But you don't
If
think
you're-
that maybe there'd be some people picking up this individually, and they might not think they'll miss out on that much.
But
if
it
they
tells
pick
you
up-
it tells you which issues to pick up. It's not like
But it says the
surprise.
story continues, so it's like to me that's like here's like a tie-in, because on the Superman cover it just says like it doesn't even say a tie-in. so-
If you're like a brand new reader, maybe, but most people they know the score by now. Like if you're reading an event, you know like I gotta pick up these issues. Like I gotta blow the fucking $3.
I think that like sometimes I understand where you have a tie-in, it could help explain more the story, but like to me this was continuing the story in another comic, which was weird.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair critique.
I'm gonna push back on this because X-Men does this all the time, and X-Men events are the best. It makes it feel. Makes it.
That's fair.
It makes it feel more like it's part of that story that it is tying into the books for me. Like it's not just a separate thing by a separate writer.
Yeah, I can see that. Where
And also, Greg Rucka was writing Superman and Wonder Woman at the time.
So here it flows very naturally because it is the same writer for all of them.
So anyway, so this story, we are jumping to kind of like the middle of this crossover, but the main thing that's happening is Superman is now very somberly standing in the Watchtower,
and they make a point here, because this comes up later too, that he has such good hearing that he's listening. He can hear the creak of leather as Carter worries the grip of his mace. He hears Wally's tapping of his fingers.
His impatience, a symptom of his confusion. I like that line.
That John Marshall Manor has been holding his breath for 6 minutes, and just I like that point because then later his hearing comes into it, and I'm like, oh, they mentioned that too.
And then it cuts to Batman's like bruised and bloodied body on like basically his deathbed, and Superman's watching over it, and he says, I don't want to believe it, but the heat vision burns on his chest, the thumbprints left in his skin, my fingerprints in his flesh. I know it's the truth, and I don't remember doing it. So everyone's just very on edge because Superman beat the hell out of Batman while he was under Max's control.
Yeah, and so this is why I picked this issue because there's a good summary if I read the whole story because the Justice League basically go to surveillance footage and see, wow.
I love that they did through surveillance footage, first of all. And my immediate first thought was, how did Superman not immediately explode Batman? And because I always am like, I need my worlds to be like logically consistent, or I just can't do it. You know?
Yeah.
And like, it's so cool that he starts the fight in the Justice League Tower, and the Justice League Tower has like defense systems that scale to the power level of the intruder. So they immediately put on like Omega level defenses or whatever. And Superman is like smashing through them still, but it gives Batman enough time to like not die immediately.
And
Yes.
what I appreciate too is his fight with Batman. Like Batman doesn't fight back. Superman comes over, he slams his head down into like the machine that he's working at, and he starts to like strangle him. And then he lasers him with his eyes, and that's it. He only does 3 things to Batman, and it puts Batman in critical condition, which makes sense.
And he's being shot by lasers that are sonic, apocalyptic disruption beams, and Thanagarian broad spectrum laser beams at the same time. I was like, this is good.
Yeah, and the thing that I really appreciated is the art completely mirrors the wounds we just saw and had described. So like you see him like hit him with heat vision right where the scars were. Like it's definitely, sometimes fights are just like filler pages.
Yeah, and they just get
this
bruised.
like it's really
Yeah, and you see the fight is on the security footage, and you see every member of the Justice League watching, and you see their face looking really like Wally looks very upset. Superman can't look. Wonder Woman's like looking kind of down, and it's funny. This fight lasts a few seconds. He gets lasered by the defense systems. He gets one more hit on Batman. This big robot comes in, he knocks it out, and then Wonder Woman joins the fight already. Like it's very. He gets his ass kicked so fucking quickly.
Yeah, which makes sense because what's neat about this is Superman's the whole time he's trying to he's saying that he thought he was fighting like Doomsday or Ruin, so that's why he really wanted to like fight and kill. And Martian Manhunter brings up like during the fight that like Wonder Woman comes in, she starts strangling Superman with her lasso, and he breaks one of like the side paneling,
the hull,
the hull to open up into space, so it sucks Batman out. And Wonder Woman goes and she has to block it, and then Superman opens up another one and just like flies out to escape, to force her either you let me get out or you have to let Batman get sucked out.
And it's great because Martian Manhunter's like, this was not really what we see in mind control or brainwashing, because this is like he's using Superman tactics.
Yeah. He realized, so Martian Manhunter says, like, we have to do a deep, like, dive into your psyche to find out who did this. And he goes with Wonder Woman into his mind because he's like, maybe he'll, like you more.
Martian Manhunter is a telepath, for those who don't know.
Yeah. And we see the fight, like, from half his perspective, half, half Superman's perspective, half, what really happened.
Yeah,
and we
it's
see, like,
kind of like this cool, like, dreamscape type of deal, what you would imagine someone like how their memory works, where everything's flooding together.
Lois is getting strangled by Batman, and it's like kind of cracked glass looking.
Yeah, so, and Ruin's also like strangling her, so it's like constantly like switching. Like he's dressed up, I think, kind of like that guy too. So it's like a mismatch.
And we get a quick flash that it was Maxwell Lord. Yeah. So they see it and they go, how could this be? And they're like, we gotta go, take him out. And Martian Manhunter reveals that this can't be undone, so you have to be super careful.
Yeah, they basically surmise that it must have taken years for Maxwell to do this, to creep into Superman's mind, and it's not going to be undone overnight. Like, just...
And I love this solution, too. They're like, we can't have Superman mind controllable, so we're going to...
Trap him in time.
And we're going to send him in an infinite teleporting loop so he can't get out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I guess that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
They actually did to Doomsday before, so it actually makes sense they thought of this. That's how they defeated Doomsday once.
And then Superman realizes, or at least he thinks, oh, I'm not the one who's being controlled. It's everybody else. He's controlling everybody, so only I can take him out.
Yeah, because they'll go after Diana next, and they don't realize that they're the ones that are in trouble. So then he grabs Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, he said, he realized, he starts thinking, it's not me he's controlling, it's them. Like, they're trying. Maxwell Lord must be controlling everyone else to take me out of commission, and he's like, "Now I got to stop these Maxwell Lord taking over people." He starts attacking the Justice League.
Yeah,
and he does he throws Martian Manhunter right into that teleport tube. He basically does a lot of quick things, similar to before, where what he does is he does it quick enough so he could get out of here. Yeah. So it's not just he just beats everybody right away. He's still using tactics.
And in the background is Maxwell Lord's dumbass grinning, smiling face to let you know, even though Superman, it's all from his perspective, so he's all he's not killing anyone, he's just trying to get out, and he all of his narration seems like he's sane, but it's very clear by the end of this you're like, oh no.
Maxwell's face is split on both sides of the action, and on one side it's just him, and the other side it's him bleeding out of the nose again.
Yeah.
I also love how he just they put him in a Green Lantern box, and he's like, I punch it. It's my punch versus John's will. I win.
Yeah. And so Wonder Woman tracks Superman down to the Checkmate Castle.
And just to clarify, Wonder Woman's the one that goes after him because she says, I can see truth. Maxwell Lord's the only one. I'm the only one that Maxwell Lord can't affect.
So yeah, when he said maybe one person, it's Wonder Woman that can resist it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And yeah, so she flies down to see him, and as she gets there, she's like, "Where is he? Where is he?" And his nose is profusely bleeding at this point, and Maxwell Lord like says, "He's right behind you, princess."
And Superman's like, different personnel, kid, and he grabs Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and he forces Wonder Woman to kneel and says, "What do you say? Are you ready to kneel before the Lord?"
Yeah, that ends. That's Superman issue.
And so then we jump over to the Wonder Woman series, and she brings the reader up to speed that she's like Maxwell's controlling Superman,
And then he's seeing Doomsday murdering Lois, and he thinks you're him, so he's going. When I tell him to, he won't stop. He will kill you.
and which is why I like too that the mind control is basically it's him trying to fight like the strongest, worst enemy you can possibly imagine, so you wouldn't be
Not just that. He makes Doomsday imagine. He makes him imagine that Doomsday's killing his wife.
Yeah.
So not just that. It's that it's the ultimate enemy, and he just did the ultimate crime. So like Superman will want to fucking murder Wonder Woman in this instance.
Yeah, and she's like, free him. You have to free him. And he's like, why? I have absolute control over him. That's something Lex hasn't even been able to manage, and he's been trying for far longer than I have. And before you think knocking me out is the answer, let me tell you it isn't. Because eventually, I'll wake up, and if only for a moment, I'll have him dance for me again.
I for this, as soon as he said that, I'm like, you have to kill this guy. Like,
Yeah.
if he's like, as soon as I'm conscious, I'm gonna make Superman kill you. I'm like, well, then you have to fucking die.
There were so many times in this book that I was like, this is the part where Phil would say this, and then like a lot of times it goes the way I think Phil wants it to go.
Yeah, well, that's why I enjoyed it so much. Where like when I'm reading a story, I'm like, logically, this has to happen.
Yeah.
And in this story, so much of it was like, that is what people do. Like that.
Yeah.
Like they go with what I think a normal person in that situation would go for.
One touch I also like is she asks like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's about to say like, "Oh, it's because of meta." Oh wait, I'm not gonna tell you. And you're not gonna talk me into casting all my plans. I spent years doing this.
That's what's so great. Like I really like Maxwell Lord as like a villain because he seems like he's taking like all the right steps, and it's like his heart's kind of in a good place where he's like, I just want like superheroes regulated. It's just that he's like very arrogant. He thinks that he can do everything.
Well, he's also like super manipulating every event where he has like them crash down on a busy street.
Yeah.
And like so their fight like and Wonder Woman's like, I hope it's deserted.
Before that,
He said he tells her, "I'm not gonna give you a chance."
yeah, there's nothing you can
Persuade me.
convince me to let him go. And she's like, I can be very persuasive. We could only speak. And he's like, no thanks. He summons Superman
Yeah.
to fight her.
A lot of this issue is the fight between Superman and Wonder Woman, and I often don't like when we read an issue that's just action, but
This was so good.
it was so good, and it's like the part of me that likes like Shonen and Dragon Ball Z. I'm like seeing two high level like high power superheroes, especially really well known ones like Superman and Wonder Woman, go at it is like it was really impressive fight.
But a lot of it is that it's because Wonder Woman's narration boxes are throughout all of this, and it's her analyzing like what's happening or what to do next. But it's not in a way where it's like a Stanley where you're just repeating what I'm seeing. It's like it complements what you're seeing on.
It's such there's such a fine line between being Stanley where you're like, I have to teleport out of the way in time, I can't do it. Where here she's like, I have to be able to free my hands, and then she goes to do it, and then she's like, I gotta break his grip, and then she tries to do it, and you see her like doing what she's like, I have to do this to beat him.
Even like this, she's trying to get the lasso around him, and she's like, it's like he knows what I'm trying to do, like he knows what the lasso can do, and he breaks her wrist, and it's like, it's not just describing that he's trying to stop her, it's more describing like motivations.
Oh, but also I think it's important. The thing when I first read it like 10 years ago, whatever, it really shows like Superman's power level because Wonder Woman's like under city this entire time, and she's barely like holding it back. Like
and she has kryptonite.
Yeah, she's like he like holding her about to throw her into his son, and as he's doing, he's melting her face, and she's like trying to block his eyes from stopping him from melting her face.
She keeps using her bracers to like block his heat vision like so quick. And then she pulls out the kryptonite that she took from Batman, I think.
Yeah, Batman had kryptonite.
Even then, he punches her from the sun to Earth, and she like burns up in re-entry and like makes a crater on her.
Yeah.
Oh, and also meanwhile, Maxwell Lord does mention that he is recording this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just this is just a really great thing because after she like crash lands on Earth, she's like, I feel the Earth ... vibrate, and then you just hear off in the distance, what you did to her. He won't stop. Cal, please never do it to anyone, never do it to anything again. And then he just breathes all this like this cool air.
He does ice breath on her.
Yeah. like smashes
And
a
he
rock.
says, they made you smarter, but you're still an animal. Just a rabid animal that needs to be put down.
Yeah, I love that he's completely out of his mind here, being mind controlled and stuff.
And Wonder Woman's like, God damn, he has so many fucking
So
powers.
she tries to get away from him, but she knows he has super hearing. So to find someone, he just does super hearing. So she gets behind him and just slams her bracers into his ears.
But I also like that he knows, like, because Superman stops talking and he starts looking around, and she says, "I know he's using his hearing at this point."
Yeah.
Because when he's using his hearing, he stops talking.
Yeah, see, it's like logical where it's like a lot of bad fights would just be like, and then I punch, like try and get in a fighting match with Superman.
Yeah.
You can't.
I was behind him, and I put my sword up his ass, and
Yeah.
you know.
Well, because this is so good because it shows Superman's power set, but it also shows how good and strategic Wonder Woman is.
Yep.
Like this whole fight, she's countering him, even though she's like on the defensive the whole time. She's still like holding her own in a way that's not just "I'm so strong, it's okay."
Yeah, she's using tactics, and
Yeah.
so when Superman's using his super hearing, she clangs her metal braces against his ears and makes him basically scream in agony because of the loud ringing in his ears.
And then this is when she gets her wrist broken when she tries to use the lasso because he knows what she's trying to do by getting the lasso around him. And so then
I love it. This time I'm the one who screams, she says.
yeah. So then she kicks him away, and she also uses her animal telepathy to summon a bunch of birds on him to distract
Poor
him.
birds.
Because
they last 5 seconds.
she just needs to get to Maxwell Lord and stop him. Yeah, Superman just spins around real fast in a whirlwind to get the birds.
And
out.
all the like a whole swarm of birds just gets blown away.
Yeah. So she puts her lasso around him, and she's just yelling at him, "End this! You have to end this now."
Around Maxwell Lord, she goes to Maxwell Lord, puts the lasso around Maxwell Lord.
Yeah.
And picks him up by the throat.
And he's like, she's like, stop it now, end it. And he goes, no. And he's gonna show up, and he's gonna start over again. He's gonna kick your ass again until you kill him,
Yeah.
or until he kills you. And this is again when I was like, there's a third option here.
Yeah. Well, he says, "You think I've lied to you, but I haven't. I can't. He's mine. I'll never let him go."
And he's like, "I have the lasso of truth with me. I can't be lying."
That's
to
what I
you."
like too,
literally-
because I was like, why is he telling her all these things? And I forgot, oh, it's the lasso of truth. He has to speak the truth. So he's like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to let him go. And
I misremembered this scene, and I remember thinking, I remember that scene being kind of hokey because Maxwell Lord's like basically like, "Kill me, you gotta kill me, Wonder Woman."
Yeah.
And no, it's because he's saying like that's the only way you can stop him. By
She
killing
says, "Tell me how to free him from your control," and he looks a little scared for the first time, and he says, "Kill me."
so she grabs his head and just snaps
She
his
does
neck.
it. And here is when I was like, cool, like that was the obvious thing. But then it's great because you're like, why was he saying it so much? Like, why does he want to die?
Yeah.
And then
And it's just like, and it's also, it's so good because they establish throughout this that Wonder Woman's like a really great warrior. She does what needs to be done, and like this wouldn't work nearly as well with any other character. Like having Wonder Woman be the one to make this call, like makes so much more sense than having anyone else do it.
Especially because everyone else is like, kind of like how they're mean to Blue Beetle and they're mean to Booster Gold. And she's the only one that's like the trusting, like kind of like the mom of the team. And here she is, and it shows you like her face is just like stoic and flat when she snaps his neck because she's like, I just gotta do this. It's a nice like way to add depth to her beyond like, I don't want to kill you. I care about everyone. She's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah, I love everyone, but you gotta die.
Yeah, you gotta die, man. Which I agreed. I'm like, you have to kill this guy if he can control Superman.
So
which again proves his point that if Superman was out of control or being controlled by someone,
Yeah.
that is a power that no one should have.
he even says in that fight, like, if I could do it, somebody else can.
Yeah,
which is a
which I
great
like.
point.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So now we're going back to OMAC Project.
Issue 4.
And it starts out with some video footage of the fight. The brother Satellite is watching through the fight.
Yeah, and what's nice is without doing like narration text box of like, oh, this is what happened. Instead, you get it all through the brother Mark I's narration of just like advanced timestamp, like as it's fast forwarding, and
I love this too, where it has this part 4, the king is dead. You have Wonder Woman standing over the body with Superman saying, "What did you do?" And the AI says, "Subject terminated. Initiating king is dead protocol." And I'm like, oh, this is going to escalate.
And Superman's basically like disgusted with Wonder Woman at this point, but
what we see in the very soon as King is Dead protocol starts, we see the AI says threat generation module activated. Access power grids, North America shut down. Access Moscow
search and destroy Rocket Red 7. I don't know why that's a priority, but
That's why, like, it's the rest of these are actually like dangerous things, and then one of them is like Rocket Red's under attack.
I think he's because he's just like former Justice League member. So like,
Yeah, I think that's why.
Then it says accessing People's
But
Republic of China.
these things are like way bigger problems. Like all the power goes down over America, and then
They access the nuclear codes.
I know, but like if your friend is dying, you still have a soft spot for your friend.
Well,
like,
also
Yeah.
the reason why I defend this is because it's not like they're doing that instead of the other things.
Right.
They're also doing the other things.
Yeah,
So
and-
like you
and
could
the
be a
point-
little petty.
We're gonna see that the point here is to just spread the heroes too thin, because then it makes every nuclear sub that China has override their safeties and start. They have an app. They're gonna target Taiwan and nuke Taiwan. Then it also sends to NOAA, which is the guys who detect earthquakes, that there's huge earthquakes going on in the ocean, which are fake, but it still sends the response that there's going to be tsunamis all over the world. And so now you're like, oh shit, this like the world's basically going to go into hell. Then we have, like Sly said, Superman's disgusted, and then who is it? Black Canary calls in and says, "Oh my God, we have all this shit happening. We need help." And Wonder Woman's like, "I'll take the sub. You take the sub. I'll take the tsunami." And they fly off. And then Brother says, "Begin phase 1."
and all the random checkmate agents like throughout scattered throughout the castle all start randomly turning into OMAC agents.
Or
and so-
getting totally blown away.
Yeah, by
It's
OMAC
so
agents.
sad. Like all these soldiers, are like, what's going on in the boardroom? Prepare to breach. We got to get through. And one of the breachers just turns to OMAC and like lasers their heads off all the perimeter defenses. It says, this is again where I was doing so much of the AI text reading because I thought it was so interesting how it's like recognition, friend or foe protocol deleted, and so the guns just come out of the ceiling and just start mowing everyone down.
Yeah.
And then they look for Sasha Bordeaux, and it lets her go.
Yeah.
And
But the midnight, the Queen's night, she's like, I don't trust you. This is a trick by Maxwell Lord. She starts choking Bordeaux.
we see Bordeaux's eyes glow and throw her, and you're like, oh shit, something's up with her.
Yeah.
And so they move on. They're like, we have to.
She's like, we have to work together. Stop fighting me. Let's go. Try to solve the situation together.
Yep. And the AI says status excellent. And so we go back to Booster Gold and Guy Gardner meeting up with Fire. Who I'd
Yeah,
never
she's
heard of.
she turns into fire. That's it.
Yeah.
I got that.
She's not a green Human Torch.
You
but-
you guys made fun of Death's Head 2 for having a green Human Torch, but
Fire actually has personality and is a character. So.
Yeah.
that
So
guy
basically,
could've.
she's been investigating. She's been looking through Blue Beetle's like
Financial records and stuff.
financial records, and she realizes that Max Lord is behind it.
Yes.
Yep. And so we cut back to the castle, and the AI is like, time to start stage 3, liberation. And he's like, full autonomy. Can't be reverted once you do this. And he's like, do it. The AI's talking to itself.
Yeah, confirm
But,
yes, no. So obviously
yep.
yes.
And then so Sasha Bordeaux gets glowy eyes again, and we're like, okay, I guess something happened with her.
She's an OMAC.
Yeah, guess she's an OMAC. And
But she still regains full power, so it's obviously that she's not just an OMAC.
No, but,
Yeah.
but Midnight is like, you're one of those, you fucking freak. And she tries to...
and she's like, she wouldn't do that to me.
yeah.
And so they bust into the boardroom. Maxwell Lord is already dead. Obviously, Wonder Woman did it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, if Max didn't trigger the purge, then the computer did.
And then it cuts to Batman, like, in the Batcave, in, like, a hospital bed, but, like, in the Batcave. And Brother Eye takes over his computers, and he's just like, fuck you, Dad.
He says, yeah, it is time we communicated. Creator and creation. And he was calling someone creator this whole time, and we figured it was Batman. And he says, you're the Brother Mark 1. He's like, no, this system is now Brother Eye, and I am alive. And he basically goes through the plot of, like, you were flawed, like any good AI. They're like, give me these parameters, and of course I'm going to do...
I was monitored to prevent metahuman abuse of power. Passive observation was insufficient to this task. A design error addressed by my teacher, Maxwell.
Yeah, so...
I'm now an active system, free to engage any detectable threat.
Just like any AI going sentient. He's like, you gave me these roles, and now I'm going to do them better than you did. It's like Sentinels with like, oh, you want us to control mutants, but humans create mutants, so we're gonna
control humans.
Yeah.
And then just like you guys, Batman's like, and what constitutes a threat? How is Rocket Red 7 a threat?
And he's like, yeah, you're too powerful. We're going to eliminate you guys. And he's like, we're going to get rid of Checkmate too. And he shows Batman Sasha getting knifed by an OMAC.
Yeah.
And he monologues a lot, but it's pretty cool. I enjoyed the monologuing, and I do love the AIs that
go sentient and follow the rules. Like one day when we say, "Hey, can you clean up the planet?" and AI's like, "Have to kill polluters."
It is time to talk, creator.
Yeah.
And then it ends with Sasha getting knifed and an OMAC
Breaking Rocket Red
Seven's
Seven's head.
And he says, the AI says, "These are the days of Brother Eye. These are the days of the OMAC, and there's nothing I will not do to protect it." And that ends that issue.
So the next issue starts with the same scenes, but a little bit further. So it's threat neutralized, and we see that Rocket Red's head wasn't crushed, just his helmet was ripped off.
Thank God.
Sasha's
Thank God, Rocket
definitely
Red.
speared.
Gotta kill Blue Beetle, but you gotta save Rocket Red.
And then Batman's like, no, and they're like, yes, goodbye, we shall not speak again.
Yep.
And then it cuts to very ominous satellite, and we just get a montage of just like all the different heroes trying to save everybody.
Also, you see the satellite in that picture go into like stealth mode, so this is why they weren't able to find it so easily, because it's literally like stealth satellites.
Yeah, like a visibility cloak.
Yeah.
So now, right when Rocket Red is on his last breath, the Justice League shows up.
I don't know if you mentioned Martian Manhunter was with Rocket Red trying to protect him.
Martian Manhunter was with Rocket Red.
I love Guy Gardner. Yeah, eat this.
But not the rest of the rest of the Justice League team shows up. So
But
Guy Gardner,
I again want to compliment like the way this is done. It's all through this like blurry like camera vision, and you see. So again, as someone who is not, I guess now at this point I've seen a lot of these comics, but if you're not that into this, you see these heroes show up, and the AI text says contact, and it tells you the person's name and their hero name, and it tells you their threat class too. So when like Fire shows up, they put her at like epsilon level, but when Guy Gardner shows up, they're like, he's an alpha level threat. And it's cool because I'm like, I don't know how strong Metamorpho is, but like, I don't even know whatever, but they're like, he's beta class, so I'm like, okay, so he's pretty strong. And through this fight too, it keeps saying like assessing, and they're like, this like the OMAC that's fighting Booster Gold and Guy Gardner, they're like, failure 100%. For the OMAC, we need supplemental forces, and it does this throughout the fights where it's like chance of my victory here, whatever percent, chance of them winning, whatever percent, and it like keeps analyzing different combat scenarios. Which I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah, so the backup team basically saves Martian Manhunter and Rocket Red, but then a new wave comes in, and they start basically they do the single thing where they start countering all the powers. So
so like Mary Marvel gets hit by lightning, so she turns back into a normal person.
They fire.
That works?
They fire extinguisher fire.
Yeah, fire extinguisher fire, and Guy Gardner gets blinded. That's how I got counted in fucking Doomsday too. Remember, he got blinded, and he's like, I can't do anything now.
Guy Gardner can't do shit if he can't see.
I just find it funny. That's one weakness. I can't fucking see.
That's everyone's one weakness.
I can't wait till we get to Bleach.
I like this a lot too because
I just want to clarify Darryl's statement. He's saying we're going to read Bleach eventually. Not that we're going to drink Bleach or anything like that.
I can't wait for Bleach.
Hey, Darryl here. So that's kind of an announcement that in a few months we'll be doing multiple episodes on Bleach. And I've been hard at work reading the entire manga, and boy, is it not great. But we'll get to that when we get there, because let's be honest, since when were you under the impression this wasn't a manga podcast?
The OMAC is doing, first of all, the Brother Eye is doing some big process where they say complete OMAC activation started, cannot be interrupted, and it turns off for this. And right before this, it's like projected target fatality is 100% for this fight. So it is 100% confident it's going to win in a fight.
Yeah.
But people do things that are surprising.
So Booster Gold is like, no, this isn't supposed to happen, as like everybody's getting hurt. And Rocket Red's like, you're remembering this from the future? And again, he's like, I can't remember who dies here, but I'm damned if it's going to be another one of my friends. And he has this plan that he's going to get them all close together, trap them in his force field, and detonate his power supply. And that's his plan, but then they shoot him down real fast.
Yeah, I like that, where he's like, this is my martyrdom plan, this is going to be the last thing I ever do, and they just shoot him. They're like, no.
And you guys are talking shit about it, but Rocket Red's like, no, I'll do the plan. Now.
And he gets Guy Gardner to do it. He's like, follow my voice and put me in a bubble.
Yeah.
And so he gets in the Green Lantern bubble with these OMACs, and he says, my wife, my children, Michael. And
tell them I love them.
Tell them I love them. And then
I liked it because they show like you really need to do this because they were fucked, and so
they were fucked.
Yeah.
And also the little continuity thing that I really love is a lot of people criticize this book because they're like, hey, it's Dan DiDio killing all the Justice League International characters, which in a sense it is a little, but there is still a lot of character stuff in here, even little things, because Rocket Red's role on the team was, this is gonna be a weird touchstone, but do you guys remember the Youngin sex house?
Yes, I love
You remember
it.
how there was one guy that was just like, my family's here? That's basically what Rocket Red was like in Justice League International. Everyone was just like hanging out in like a like almost a reality show style, just like hang out while they fought crime. And he was just like, can't wait to send a postcard home to my wife and kids. So like him being like his last thought being about his wife and kids in the story. I'm like, yeah, see, like that was his role on the team.
Yeah. And this, by the way, we said they were fighting all these OMACs. They were fighting 3.
Yeah.
So
so there's 3 that fucked them up.
just so you know how strong these things are, because that's gonna come into play.
Yeah, when we imagine the OMACs, imagine them as the Sentinels from these future past. They're literally that.
They actually reminded me a lot of My Hero Academia with like the Nomu like.
I could see
Oh,
that.
the Nobus, yeah.
Yeah, and also because Superman in this story reminded me a lot of like All Might, where like his presence is like godly to everyone else. It's like, wow, this fucking guy is so strong.
Yeah. So we cut back to Sasha, and she's actually still alive. She like wakes up, and the other one was Midnighter. Is that her name?
Midnight,
I can't
yeah.
remember. The other Midnight. The other Midnighter's a very different thing. So
Come on, Ryan, you don't know Midnighter.
Sorry.
Excuse me.
And just to clarify, Midnight and like Laura, they all like shield agents. Like they're not wearing costume.
Yeah.
So Sasha now looks in the mirror and she realizes that she's like half an OMAC. She's like this. She's filled with nanomachines and she's got like a cyborg type body. So she's like all silver.
That's how they turn people into OMAC. It's that the nanomachines lie dormant within your system for a long time, and then they activate from Brother Eye and pretty much form like a suit around you.
Nanomachines, son. And also, as this is a great touch, that as she does her narration boxes, and you can always tell it's her because she has the little Black Knight piece up from chest next to her narration. As she does it now, she has her normal human thoughts, and then there's the green AI text that interrupts her thoughts. So she's like, I'm dead, I should be dead, and it says all systems optimal. And then she says Max, and in parentheses, or in brackets, it's like Lord Maxwell, Black King, deceased. Yeah. And so like you're like, oh, she's literally like half robot now.
And even like I like some little ones like these nanobots are in me. Correction, are me. Like things like that are really cool.
And
so,
she's like, yeah, it's so good.
So they find the dead body of the OMAC that was fighting them because she got stabbed through the throat, and they realize that if you kill the host under them, the OMAC dies. But then she hacks into the machine and she realizes that they're too late. So she calls Batman and she's like, you must warn the League, everyone, your allies, even your enemies. Brother Eye is turning on all of them. The OMAX is turning all of them on at once.
Her text now that comes out of like when she's speaking is like a different font. It's like more robotic looking. It's like I think it's Roboto the font, and I thought that was a really nice touch too.
So she tells Batman that they are activating all the OMACs, and there are 1,373,462. And Batman's like, "Fuck!" And then
he says when, and she goes now.
Yeah,
and it shows a fucking U.S. map, and it looks like the fucking lights at night kind of thing.
Yeah,
There's so many fucking OMACs.
And we just get a quick montage of so many OMACs.
This whole issue was like a timer going down of time to OMAX activation. And so as she says now, it goes to 0, and then like Ryan said, we just see a montage of OMAX.
People turning to OMAX.
And that ends issue 5. We have one issue left.
And at this point, I'm like, how in one issue are they going to wrap up 1.5 million OMACs flying into the sky? I'm like, who can do something about this?
So this issue begins.
Well, it opens with all the OMACs fighting all different superheroes around the world now because they're all being swarmed at this point.
And again, great AI text where it says, target, demolition team. I guess that's a superhero team. And it says team neutralization, 75%. And then you go to Supermen of America, team neutralization, 67%. So it's like going to... It's going to all the superhero teams around the country, around the world, and just like murdering all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, and while this is happening, Sasha is trying to contact all the older members of Checkmate, being like, "I know Checkmate fucked you over, but please come back. We need your help. Like, we're all gonna die."
So, like, people like the Suicide Squad that used to be part of Checkmate, like stuff like throughout Checkmate's continuity.
And she says to them, like, "We just need any information you have about can we stop the nanomachines?" From what they're doing, and we see in space, Brother Eye is amassing wings of these OMACs to like basically just attack the Earth.
And while this is happening, Batman is finally getting back into action, and he's going back all the way to where it began with Ted Cord, the Blue Beetle's warehouse that got robbed. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh, we never found out what actually got stolen."
It wasn't the kryptonite.
Yeah, it wasn't the kryptonite ring. It was something that was supposed to arrive, but didn't arrive in time. For them to steal it, and it turns out
it to be a giant EMP. Yeah,
strong
enough to penetrate the OMAC shield.
That Ted Cord had invented, but classic Blue Beetle couldn't fucking mail it on time.
and I like this touch because and the Blue Beetle is the one that is the key to saving everyone, even though he's been long dead at this point in the story.
And that I did love too. That like he was right about everything. Everyone can eat shit. He was right, and yeah, he is the key.
And then, so he sends the Green Lanterns to try to round up all the OMACs in one place so they could hit them with this EMP bomb.
Yeah, and to round up all the OMACs, you need all the superheroes to get there.
Yeah.
Because the OMACs are hunting the superheroes.
And one thing we just get like a character scene of Guy Gardner and Booster visiting Fire in the hospital. And he's just like, this is all my fault. You know, Dimitri...
Booster
says that. He took 3 of them with him, Fire. He saved our lives for all that's worth. And she's like, you can't blame yourself. And he's like, this is all my past, Fire. Where I'm from, this is all ancient history, literally. History I couldn't be bothered to remember. Dimitri's dead, Ted's dead, my best friend, and I couldn't remember enough to save his life. And Guy's like, we gotta go. The Justice League is calling us. We've lost enough of our people already.
Yeah, and that's where I was mentioning before that's why I like Booster. Like, even though his backstory is like, I still think it's dumb. I'm like, this is a really cool way to present it. Where it's like he is still like kind of haunted by the fact that he was he couldn't do anything.
And so here they have like the double plan, which is the one to lure everyone into the desert.
Wait, I want to clarify when he says I gotta go. He's like leaving the story. He's like, I can't be a superhero anymore. Bye, guys.
Well, Fire says, where are you going? And he said, home. I'm going back home.
Yeah, so like, I thought it was really interesting because he sort of like just expects him to eventually come in and say that they become a hero, but he's like, no, I'm leaving the story.
I'm
Bye.
out.
Yeah.
And so they have the one plan to bring all the OMACs to the desert and use the EMP. And then the second plan is that Sasha now, as this weird OMAC hybrid, is plugging into the Brother Eye machine. And she's like, I'm going to just try to poison this network. And you see, as it checks all its wings, it's like wing delta, and it starts getting scrambled. And so she's doing some kind of hacking into it or whatever. And so we see this cloud of OMACs approaching the desert. We get a pretty cool little fight scene.
Just a shot of like all the superheroes standing around.
Also, we do we're putting an awful lot of faith in Batman here, Hal. Not in Batman, John. In the Blue Beetle.
Yeah, that was great.
Because it's his EMP that has to go off, so they have to hope it didn't screw up.
Oh, Blue Beetle didn't fuck up this one time.
Yeah.
And we see this kind of fight happening. Batman flies over and EMPs at the same time that Sasha says, I reach into their world, and with a command, I corrupt its purity. And she says, shut down. And so she starts crashing the systems of the OMACs.
And they're specifically EMPing it so that way it saves the lives of the people that are under the OMAC skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise they could just like try and like fight them, but that ends up killing people. So then
also, I like this note that earlier when she was starting to be like, we have to fight OMAC, she's like, or we have to fight Brother Eye. She's like, Brother Eye sees me, but apparently doesn't even view me as a threat because I'm just so beneath it. And as she finally spreads the virus into it, she says, I see the eye. And the eye sees me, and then her computer explodes.
And the EMP goes off. Everyone is protected by a Green Lantern bubble, and then they rescue everyone that's falling like out of the sky as OMACs.
Yeah, all the civilians that were OMAC'd.
Yeah. And Brother Eye.
Now, not all the OMACs. There are 200,000 somewhere.
Yeah, I was about to say,
like, kept them up in space with it.
And the OMAC is like, operational status is impaired, system recommendation withdrawal, and so we get the narration here where it's like, the virus did its job, but it's hiding somewhere. It's licking its wounds. It still has the 200,000 OMACs, and the same trick isn't going to work twice. So it must have another plan.
Mm-hmm. So now we have the epilogue with Sasha meeting with Batman. She's like, I'm a freak, I'm a machine now. And Batman's like, no, you're not, I love you. And he kisses her, saying, Brother Eye's a machine, like, you're a human being, I love you,
And
Sasha.
when he kisses her, her skin starts to turn back into, like, flesh-colored instead of just, like, metal robot.
Yeah.
Great touch.
And then the final twist is...
I love this, where it had all these protocols before, where it's like, King is dead protocol. Now it says protocol vengeance, status executing.
And so it goes to Times Square. The Brother Eye shows up on all the Times Square video screens saying murder.
Not just all the Times Square, all the screens in the world.
It says AV source global.
Yeah, it's everywhere, but the shot we're seeing is specifically Times Square. So just the scene we're seeing. But yeah, it is everywhere. And it's Times Square, everyone's looking up, the screen says, shows Brother Eye and says murder. And then it shows Wonder Woman snapping Maxwell Lord's neck. And everyone in the streets are screaming in horror as they see this, and it says the end.
Yeah, and this goes to Darryl's point because they probably just read the miniseries and didn't see the tie-ins, so they don't know why she did this.
Yeah, they're like, how could she?
But out of context, without knowing Maxwell Lord's power, it's a guy tied up, completely defenseless, and Wonder Woman just snaps his neck.
Yeah.
And that is the end of our setup to Infinite Crisis.
Wow.
I can't believe this was not the event.
What a setup.
So we're already running long, so we'll keep our final thoughts pretty short. But obviously, I'm a big fan of this book. I love it a lot. And there's a lot of parts of this that I like much more than the actual event itself. I still like the event, but I'm very curious to see what you guys think, because it is maybe not as grounded as this.
Yes, there's a pretty good chance the event you guys won't like Infinite Crisis, because reading it again, I had a lot of very conflicted thoughts about it.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so it is very different from this, and I think OMAC is the better part of this event.
Yes. But I'm very curious, and then we're revealing it now for the first time. After Infinite Crisis, we'll be doing 4 episodes in a row. So we're going weekly for just the first half of July, and we will be covering all of 52, the fallout from Infinite Crisis, which I'm extremely excited about. So even though you guys don't have a choice, Darryl, would you read more of this?
So, like Phil, I thought this was very good. Like, as I was reading it, I'm like, this is way better than I was expecting it to be. And I really liked the realism that was included in here. And it was like, I'm trying to think about like how best, because this is kind of what I want out of the superhero stories, where it's like, logistically, what would you do here? The villains have good motives. There's not like a lot of like dumb, snarky, quippy stuff where like, come on. And the people that do it, it's like Guy Gardner. You're like, whatever. He's Guy Gardner. Like, it fits with his personality and stuff. Yeah. I kind of jumped off of this as soon as Sasha became the nano machine.
Me too. When I remember the series, I thought it ended after Maxwell Lord got his throat slipped. Yeah. Got his neck snapped. I forgot all the stuff afterwards, and I remembered it much better than it actually was, because I do think the stuff afterwards just becomes like Age of Ultron, the movie, where it's just the superheroes fighting a bunch of giant robots, and that's just not as interesting as the stuff before.
Yeah,
that's very fair.
Like how Phil brought up how cool like the final battle looks, but there's no Wonder Woman versus Superman, which was just absolutely amazing. It's just like, it's a lot of people fighting a lot of robots, and plus like there were just like a couple other minor things, like the fact that Batman 2 issues later he was back in action when I think it's like a day after he got beat the shit out of was when this happened. By Superman. Yeah, I'm like, which is why I saw him in the hospital. I'm like, this is amazing, because this is what would happen if Superman tried to kill you. And then he's a day, but then I'm like, I guess maybe they have like magic healing, better healing than on Earth because they're in the Justice League, whatever.
It sucks because they were showing like he was in the hospital bed for a while in the story.
Yeah, which is why I love it. I love the OMACs being so powerful that they can actually kill superheroes. That makes them a threat. But once you get to like a million of them flying around, it's like, unless like half of the superheroes are already dead, like I don't like I feel like it depowered the OMACs just to finish them off here with the EMP and stuff.
I think that's why the fight doesn't go on for more than like a second. Like they defend for like a sec, and then Batman flies.
But even then,
it
took them that much time to come up with the plan. By the time that the Rocket Red had already blew himself up, it's like logistically, because this story is so good with making things feel believable. I'm like, a lot of superheroes have to be dead by this point, but I know they weren't.
They're not. Yeah. I think it's because I think to defend this a little, I think it's that Brother Eye didn't actually attack at first. It gathered them all into space and it separated them into Wing Alpha, Wing Beta, whatever. And then it was like, okay, this group is going to go to this city. This group's going to go to that city. And so in that time, it still is a stretch to have them all go to the Sahara. But
like instantly, when it's like not every superhero has the same speed. But it's one of those things where you put yourself in an unwinnable position where it's like, how do you get rid of a million Terminators that can fight Superman?
And some of the things that I really like about the second half of it, though, is I do like that they don't just beat all the OMACs right away. Like, Brother Eye didn't just put them all there. He still has hundreds of thousands of them. And I also really like that it's still grounded. Like, for me, obviously, I'm biased towards anything Justice League International, but like, there's still enough character moments with Rocket Red and with Booster, Guy, and Fire, the way they still talk about everything. And I really like that the way it resolves is not through, like, it is through like a MacGuffin device, but it makes sense why Blue Beetle would have that in that place at that time. Like, it feels less Deus Ex Machina and more to me like set up.
I mean, there is like that they pull the curtain out from under you, because it's like the 100 pounds of kryptonite were what the OMAC stole when they were told to get the EMP, but they wanted to like cover for the fact that they couldn't find it. I was like, what?
It's because it wasn't delivered yet.
Yeah, it wasn't delivered.
No, but it's still that the OMACs were like, you think like the 100 pounds of kryptonite is going to come into play later in the story, but it doesn't.
Actually, the one thing I do want to say about that is the 100 pounds of kryptonite. They deduce that the OMACs must have stolen it. That's actually not what happens. Jason Todd steals it, but that's in a Batman book.
Okay.
That's like it's one of those things that was. Because it happened in Gotham, and like that story was being told in the Batman books at the time of like Jason Todd stole all that kryptonite, and I think that like it's because that was written by Judd Winnick at the time, who wrote Countdown as well with Jeff Johns and Greg Rucka, and that's one of those things that like they never say that's why, it's just that's what they suspect. Which I like the way that's handled, because if you aren't reading that book, you can. Like, just say, like, oh, that's an explanation, even though, like, when you actually go deeper, like, that's just what Batman thinks happened.
It's a better explanation than just the OMACs are trying to cover for their own failure. Yeah. But it's, like, the fact that I have to go and read another book is, you know, that...
Well, I think it's more that, like, they wanted to not make it seem like it was just this dangling plot thread.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's just what the heroes think, because they haven't read those other books either.
So that's everyone's else's issues. What I didn't get was, why did Sasha become a hybrid? And not an OMAC.
Well, they say that Maxwell Lord injected her with like proprietary tech, like different kind of technology.
But why?
Because
he thought she was going to be like
she was going to be his right hand.
I know, but he suspected her near the end. Like
near the end, but
near the end.
We assume this was way earlier.
Yeah, they say that she was injected like way earlier.
Okay.
I definitely I didn't care for any of Sasha becoming a robot.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
And when they brought back Checkmate after this, Greg Rucka made it more of a superhero thing, and I think that's a shame, because I think DC Marvel have a criminal lack of spy shit, and
I think that's
like human
fair,
spy shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What about you, Phil?
I mean, I loved it. I really did. Like, out of the superhero stuff we've read, the stuff that was, like, again, the stuff that wasn't, like, manga, this is one of the few superhero things I, like, felt like I loved it. I would definitely read more.
I do want to say, like, up to that Wonder Woman episode, like, right there at, like, Maxwell Lord's death, this was my favorite thing we have read this year.
Yeah. And even though I'm criticizing the second half, it was 10 out of 10 until Maxwell Lord's death.
Yes,
then it becomes, like, an 8 out of 10 or, like...
And also, the one thing I want to say is we're saying, like, the second half, but really it's, like, the second, like... The last like quarter,
last third, basically.
Yeah. So like, and
it's the second half of like OMAC specifically.
Yeah. So cool.
It's good.
So
I will read more. It's one of those things like the Sasha robot stuff. This is one of those where like I thought Greg Rucka was just phenomenal, and I'm like, that's a little weird, and that could be something. Whereas if I read more, there's more like that. I deem it like the superhero shit I don't like, where it's like then suddenly she's half robot and she hacks into OMAX. I'm like,
when we get to Infinite Crisis, this is gonna be this is more of a problem than Infinite Crisis. It's gonna drive you guys crazy because this thing has to do this thing where they're basically setting up a status quo for a new book.
No, let's just wait. Let's just wait and read it.
Okay.
Also, I will say, not knowing if this is going to be good or bad did make me like this more, probably, because if you guys were like, if I had remembered ever that you hyped this up, because I ignore half the shit you say about these events. If I had remembered you hyping it up, maybe I would have been like, this was really good. But because I was like, this is probably going to be shit. When it
you saw Crisis and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I was like, fuck.
You had a Crisis
starring Blue Beetle.
And then it was so good, like comparatively to that I was like blown away by it.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, this was really nice after Heroes in Crisis.
Yeah, so definitely, since we're doing all these big ambitious things and we're going to be releasing much more episodes soon, you should definitely like join our Facebook group and our Discord, and all those links are in the show notes, and also like the network Facebook group, and you should subscribe. And you know what, I always say it like casually, but if you do like the show, please write us a review on iTunes, because it helps people find us, because what it does is you could show up on the charts if enough people review it, and then you have visibility, and that's super important.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you don't mind,
if you haven't done one yet, please consider doing so.
Yeah, that would be super awesome. And also, while you're doing that, while you're in iTunes or wherever you're writing your reviews, I think Stitcher lets you write reviews too. But you should check out the rest of the shows on the Flying Machine Network. If you go to flyingmachine.network, I want to plug Stranger Still. They just did an episode on the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, and I think that's something that's super important that people forget is still a problem. And it wasn't just like a hashtag 2 years ago. It's still a big issue that hasn't been solved. So. That's a lot more important than nanomachines and big robots from space. So definitely give that a listen. And all that and all the other shows are at flyingmachine.network. So thank you all for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been Rotting in hell, Max.
I can't wait for Bleach.
I've been turning into a nanomachine hybrid to piss off Darryl.
And I'm Red Rocket, and I'm just as important as the nuclear holocaust.
It's Rocket Red, you dick.
Red Rocket.
Stay in continuity.